Remember Desperate Housewives? Sunday nights at 9 is hardly TV prime time, but this was an instant hit, the fourth most watched show in the USA in its 2004 debut season, and a big hit in Canada and the UK and Australia. ABC affiliate stations were giddy until that afternoon. I sat with the station manager in his office at ABC6 WDAY-TV in Fargo, North Dakota, as he learned, watching the news on his own station, that episodes of Desperate Housewives would be available next morning each week for $1.99 on iTunes. His own network hadn't even told him they would be end-running his station. iPhone wasn't introduced until 2007. iPad didn't come along until 2010. But TV networks were already luring eyeballs away from their loyal affiliates by training us to watch on our desktop computers instead. Back to the Future. NBC now says watch Peacock instead. Your favorite food and home remodeling shows, they're full of commercials for you to watch on demand on Discovery Plus. Why? Let's ask RT Boom Bust co-host Ben Swan. Ben, Discovery Plus, the streaming home of everything you love, has plans that start at $4.99 a month, $6.99 for commercial free. Ben, who is leading whom in this shift, the media or the consumer?
Yeah, I think it's definitely the consumer. The consumer has proven that they are not interested in appointment television, though I have to say, Holland, you know, Desperate Housewives, it was appointment television, right? So many people, so many of us were tuning in to watch it every single week. I will include myself in that group. And the reality is this, that appointment television was something that so many people wanted. What's fascinating right now, though, is we're actually living in a moment where it's reversed a tiny bit. So Disney Plus, the Disney's, you know, obviously streaming service, is doing something very unique right now. They are back to once a week displaying and premiering episodes of their new programming like Loki or WandaVision, and consumers are having to wait once a week. It's something new in the streaming wars, because remember, Netflix's whole case for the consumer was you can binge watch, you can watch everything at once and you don't have to wait. And now, as a result of Disney Plus doing this, Netflix is now announcing that it too will have certain programming that you can only watch once a week. So maybe feeding back into what the consumer actually wants, which was, for a while we wanted to binge watch, but maybe now we're liking the anticipation of programming once again.
Yeah, and in the last 16 months, I think I have memorized Netflix. But as for the legacy broadcasters, are the affiliate stations getting screwed by the big corporate networks who are luring those affiliates' viewers to their direct streaming channels?
Oh, absolutely. No question about it. Look, I spent so much of my career working in local television as a news anchor, right? And as you know, those local television stations are dependent upon network programming that brings viewers in, and they stick around for that late night news. But when you have this exodus, if you will, away from broadcast television and into these streaming sites, yeah, absolutely, it hurts the bottom line more than anything else for those local stations. In fact, the one thing right now that they're barely holding on to as local stations are live sports, and even with Hulu, now you can get those in other places as well. So it is very difficult for local stations to survive that. And we should mention that even as that happens, the reason that these stations have to do it is because, again, of what consumers are looking for. Consider the fact, NBC, you mentioned Peacock. Peacock is a streaming service that had to spend $500 million just to buy back its own hit show, The Office, from Netflix in order to bring consumers back. Think about this. The Office was for many years the #1 show on Netflix, and it's NBC's property, and yet a show that was somewhat popular in its time on television has become absolutely iconic because of streaming.
9 Lives, like Seinfeld. The Crystal Ball Award for this whole streaming phenomenon has to go to Netflix because they did not name it movies by mail, back when it was snail mailing us the DVDs we chose from their menu of theatrical releases. Then, nearly a decade ago, came House of Cards. Season 1, 13 episodes, released all at once, and binge watching went digital. A couple of years later, when Netflix CEO Reed Hastings keynoted the Consumer Electronics Show, he wowed us with a preview of The Crown. And now Netflix touts a new movie every week, original content, and Amazon Prime is keeping pace. And these platforms also offer deep vaults of big screen hits. And now a Netflix deal for both with Steven Spielberg, who's going to produce new stories and whose body of work includes classics like Jaws, E.T., Schindler's List, Saving Private Ryan. Ben, we know Amazon is flush with cash. Can Netflix afford to stay in this arms race?
They're trying. It's pretty incredible when you consider how long it's taken Netflix to get the kind of traction that it has versus how quickly Disney Plus, I know I've mentioned them before, but how quickly Disney Plus was able to gain ground on them. But that comes with already having a massive media vault and making good acquisitions. You know, if you consider the fact that Netflix has done a pretty smart job of picking up certain programming. You mentioned House of Cards. At the time that they bought House of Cards, it was the most expensive television show ever to be produced. It was a home run hit for Netflix to do that, picking up certain TV shows like The Office and making them iconic when they really weren't beforehand, or even shows like AMC's Mad Men, which, you know, had a somewhat successful run on AMC, became vastly more successful when it moved to Netflix. So there is a great kind of track record for Netflix. The question is, can you survive now that everyone else is pulling their catalogs and libraries and taking them in-house? And that's very difficult. And I want to say one other thing. Before Netflix, who was the Swami who saw it all? Actually, give him credit for this. Mark Cuban. Remember his failed TV.com? Wasn't failed for him. He sold it for $4 billion. But he foresaw the future in which everyone would watch television on the internet. So